Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Jimack. I'm Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, and I'm introducing the next part of the day, which we're going to talk a little bit about making a difference in science and engineering. So, I'm Dean of the Faculty of Engineering. As you know, we have a number of faculties that relate to science and engineering. This session is mainly around physical sciences and engineering, and so we'll encompass some of the activities of the Faculty of Mathematics and Physical Sciences and the Faculty of Engineering. Obviously, as Dean of Engineering, I know a little bit more about my faculty than the others, so if you'll forgive me, we'll give you a few facts and figures about the Faculty of Engineering to get us going. We have just over 3,000 students. That's a mixture, of course, of undergraduates, postgraduates, and PhD students. We're divided into 5 academic schools, and we have what we regard as an excellent record in terms of the different league tables and different measures of success that are available. Of course, league tables aren't a true indicator of what we're really doing. They're scratching the surface of some of the things that we do within the Faculty of Engineering. But just to give you a flavour of some of the outcomes, you may be aware that our research is assessed as a university every 6 years or so, and the last assessment was in 2014. And the Faculty of Engineering was assessed as being in the top 5 in the UK across a very large number of the activities that we do, including aeronautical engineering, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering and manufacturing, also electronic and electrical engineering, metallurgy and materials. So top 5 in the UK across those units of assessment. Of course, that's just research. We also have a number of measures of how we perform in students' education. Typically, one of the good measures that people use is the Guardian League Table for universities, because that bases around a number of education-only statistics. Things like the National Student Survey results, things like how we do in terms of employability, the quality of the students that we recruit, etc. And so in the most recent Guardian League Table, which is dated 2016 already, there are 6 engineering units of assessment, and we're in the top 6 in all 6 of those. So that's chemical engineering, civil engineering, general engineering, electronic and electrical engineering, materials and mineral engineering, and mechanical engineering, where we're number 1 in the UK. So I think we've got a reasonably good spectrum of results. Of course, that's just one indication of some of the things that we do. Most of the things I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes, and that my colleagues can talk about now, are related to research, but I just wanted to put some of that in the context of what we do and how we perform in student education. So what makes us different from any other university in the UK that does research in physical sciences and engineering? Well, of course, it's really hard to be completely distinctive, but there are certain areas of expertise where we are absolutely clear that we have a national and international lead. We'll introduce you to a handful of those today. But also there's a philosophy that we've really been working on in recent years in terms of trying to go from taking us from fundamental scientific concepts right through to applications and impact on wider society. So really understanding fundamental concepts, understanding how we can model what's happening in reality and use that to design, manufacture, fabricate new materials, new devices, new things that will change the way we live our lives. And then right through to applying those techniques and technologies to end products or end services, and then translation that to have an impact on everybody's on society as a whole. So that's really where we're trying to go, from fundamental right through to impact. We're going to give you some more detailed examples of a couple of areas of that in a minute, but I'm just going to pick some very recent things that I want to highlight as examples of going from fundamental through to impact. The first one actually that I'm going to talk about is something which is some recent work that was published this summer in Nature, which is the premier journal for science. This is actually something where we're at the earliest stage. So this is really fundamental research, and the key to this is going to be the fact that we have integration between science and engineering to help develop some of the impact of this in future years. But what colleagues in the School of Physics and Astronomy have been able to do is create some brand new materials that have properties that are distinctive from other materials that so far have been invented or are found naturally. You may or may not be aware that there are only 3 naturally occurring elements which have magnetic properties at room temperature, and by basically putting together, has been carefully designed and planned out layers of carbon, copper and other materials, we've been able to manufacture a brand new material that also has magnetic properties at room temperature, which gives it some potential applications around electronic devices, for example in computers, for example in consumer electronics, robotics, etc. So the key to this is going to be how we go from this fundamental work, which is of value in its own right, to help create those new opportunities. A completely different example I want to show you is at the other end of the spectrum. This is some work that was fundamental work that was done at Leeds maybe 15 years ago, and we've taken this fundamental computer science work, which is about developing new algorithms for solving really complex optimization problems with constraints, taking those fundamental mathematical algorithms, turning them into computer software, and then commercialising it in a way that's of great value to UK and international industry. So we set up a company called Traxys, based upon the fact that we're able to provide solutions to really complex problems where we're, for example, in the transport sector, a train operating company will want to do something like minimise the number of staff that they have to employ in order to meet the timetable, but also minimise the number of trains they have to lease in order to meet their commitments. They'll want to do things like, once there's been an incident on the line, minimise the amount of time it takes to get everything back in the right place. The right trains in the right place, the right crew in the right place. But that's all done in a really complex environment, subject to complex constraints, such as the fact that there is this timetable they have to stick to. There is employment law that says, you know, people can't work more than a certain number of hours without a break, etc. And also, people live in a certain place, they have to start and finish somewhere near where they live as well. And so it's really complex problems, and we've been able to develop new solutions to these problems and take them to market. And the company has won a number of awards, and last year, for example, the turnover exceeded £25 million. It's been growing year on year since it went onto the alternative investment market, I think in 2012. So a really great example of where we've taken some fundamental developments and made a difference. And now I'm going to mention very briefly a piece of work that's been going on for a number of years in the University of Leeds around something which you may or may not have heard of called Terahertz Radiation. So not a physics lesson, but basically we know about the electromagnetic spectrum, and somewhere between infrared and microwave is a part of the spectrum called terahertz. And we at Leeds, over a number of years, have developed world-leading expertise in this field of the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's expertise in understanding the fundamental physics about how waves behave at those wavelengths and frequencies, but also about how they can be exploited. So we've created brand new devices for developing what are called quantum cascade lasers. These are devices for generating intense terahertz radiation, but also a wide range of ways of showing how this can be used. So I've given a list there, security, chemical analysis, etc. Terahertz is very good, for example, for spotting things like drugs, spotting things like explosives. In medical imaging, it can be very useful, for example, for looking at close imaging of proteins, DNA. It's got properties which make it very, very powerful. And so not only have we been developing the fundamental science, but we've been developing applications that allow those properties to potentially be exploited. And two of my colleagues, Giles Davis and Edmund Linfield, were recently awarded a major prize for their contributions to the science and technology of this region of the spectrum. I'm not going to bore you with a vision statement and all of our detailed objectives, but I just want to convey to you that basically our strategic approach is based upon three particular branches. We need to have absolutely core academic expertise in certain areas of science and engineering. We can't be world leaders at everything, but we must be world leaders at some of the core things that we do. And so in physics, in chemistry, in engineering, computer science, we are very clearly internationally leading in certain key areas. And we need to maintain and invest in developing and continuing to grow strength in those core areas. But also, we're very keen to access that expertise in a way that allows us to solve problems that others aren't able to solve. And so most problems and challenges that society have don't fit within one discipline. They're not chemistry problems, they're not electronic engineering problems. They're problems that require skills and expertise from a range of different areas to come together in order to find novel and innovative approaches to solving them. And so what we want to do is make sure that we appreciate that in the way in which we work together, and that's about creating an environment which says, yes, we've got physicists, yes, we've got chemists, yes, we've got civil engineers, but how can they work together most effectively outside of their disciplines but still having absolutely leading expertise within their disciplines to bring to the table. And then, of course, the key to making any of that successful is the people. And so what we need to do, what our vision is about, is developing the people, whether it's staff, whether it's undergraduates or postgraduate students, that have the leading expertise, but also the vision and the leadership to be the people that are pulling together the groups that will solve these societal problems of tomorrow. And so really investing in our people from when they arrive as undergraduates. Actually, we've opened a new university technology, or about to open a new university technology college in the region, so actually before people come as undergraduates, right through to our most senior professors. So one aspect of achieving that achieving that vision of interdisciplinarity is going to be through a major new investment we're making in a part of the campus that lies, for those of you who can envision the campus in your mind, between chemistry and electronic engineering. Currently there's a horrible old building called the Old Boiler House. There's a lovely building, which is the old mining building with a beautiful facade, but behind it not so nice. And then there's another building which is currently occupied by estates. We're going to keep the front of the old mining building and basically replace everything else by modern state-of-the-art facilities for science and engineering. That's going to be a new centre called the Bragg Centre, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a moment, and new homes for our School of Physics and our School of Computing. This will give a great opportunity for physics and computing to grow, both student numbers but also in the research capacity that they do. But also by locating them alongside electronic engineering, chemistry and the rest of engineering, it will help feed into this vision that we've got of creating the environment that allows people to collaborate and bring those expertise together. So the Bragg Centre is something which is going to be an internationally leading facility that builds upon the core strengths that I described to allow us to produce some further adventurous and impactful science. It's going to allow us to bring people together who work in disparate areas but use similar techniques. It's going to be allowing people to come together who work in the same areas but use disparate techniques. And so by housing these people in this common place that's right in the heart of the science and the physical science and energy part of the campus, we will be able to create more of these new teams and be able to create more of the groupings that will allow us to tackle different types of problem. And the bit that I put in red, and I won't use the pointer again, is the key. Because obviously we can create the buildings, we can buy the equipment, we can get grants for the equipment, but it's all about the people, expertise, and the imagination and creativity that they have in order to apply the facilities that we've got to solve problems. So a lot of what we're trying to do over the next few years is build the infrastructure for those people that we've got, the students that we recruit, the academics that we have to really excel. Again, I'm just going to give you a fleeting glimpse of some of the things that we want to do under the roof of the Bragg Centre. One of the things that we want to be, that we already have great expertise in, that we want to exploit, is in what we call soft X-ray facilities. This is about imaging science to allow us to deal with very challenging things, such as liquids, such as gels, things that are soft materials that maybe are changing between liquids and solids. And this is really important because it allows us to tackle a wide range of applications, for example, in pharmaceuticals, in food science, in lubrication and fuel science. A vast number of important industrial applications revolve around understanding the structure of surfaces and interfaces between fluids and soft solids. We link in with national facilities such as the Diamond Light Synchrotron at Harwell. And we link in with a diverse set of industries, some of which I've just given you examples of. Then another platform that we're going to have under the roof is something around real state-of-the-art facilities in nanotechnology and materials, allowing us to fabricate and characterise the sorts of materials I described, where we're creating these different layers that I talked about in terms of inventing these new magnetic materials. So Andrew Bell, my colleague from the School of Chemical and Process Engineering, is going to talk a little bit more about some of those applications, so I'm not going to say any more detail on that slide now. So I've tried to give you a very, very quick tour of some of what we do in engineering and physical sciences, of some of what we're trying to do in terms of our plans over the next few years, but to give that a little bit more context, a little bit more meat, some of my colleagues, starting with Dr. Rob Richardson from the School of Mechanical Engineering, are going to tell you in a little bit more detail about some of these themes. So Rob, I'll hand over to you, please. I want to talk a bit about the robotics
I think in particular I want to emphasise that robotics in this context is away from factories. We're all about robots in factories, churning away doing things. The future is really about robots amongst us. How we do all kinds of difficult, dirty tasks, but also in our homes perhaps, doing medical procedures. So it's really a massive revolution, if you like, in what robotics can do. The government recognises this by including robotics in what they call the 8 great technologies. These are technologies that they believe have a transformative potential to change everything about the way we live. Think about the internet, mobile phones, and of course robotics potentially can have the same kind of effect and really change our lives in a massive way. I think it's fairly easy to see why everyone is so interested in robotics. If you consider the estimated total annual potential for robotics is £7 billion per year. So massive, massive amounts of money. And really, I think the revolution is going to happen quite soon. I've been saying for the last 15 years, this next 5 years will be robots going to change the world. But now I'm confident. Now I'm going to change the world. So robotics at Leeds. I think we've been very, very successful in doing some amazing things. We've grown dramatically over the last few years, which is great. We have around about 20 core academic staff. These are people, if you ask them what they do, they say, I'm a roboticist. And there's 30 staff, if you ask them what they do, they give you a different answer. We have quite a large income over the last few years, about at least 20 million, depending how you count it. So we've got, the income is going in towards equipment and people to really build our capacity going forward. The university is investing both at more junior levels, with what we call University Academic Fellows. These are junior staff who are going to transfer to being tenure staff in a few years' time. Also investing in senior staff, so 2 new professors in robotics will be appointed hopefully in the next few months. There's massive investment in that area. We have undergraduate courses, both in mechatronics and robotics, in fact one of the most established in the UK, and also in MSc in robotics as well. We have around about 60 students coming in every year. It's an overall cohort now, around about 100 students across the whole thing, which is a massive thing compared considering how small, if you like, robotics is generally across all the themes across the UK. And around about 50 PhD students, which is growing rapidly all the time. So a very kind of fundamental core of activities going on. A lot of our success has been really born around our grant, which has been fantastic in terms of being able to make, physically manufacture robot systems. So there's a lot of work going on in terms of intelligence. We're successful in a bid to form this national facility in terms of, okay, you've got wonderful intelligence, but how do you fabricate robots of tomorrow? How do you physically make robots that have got all these nice, wonderful properties that can fulfill the vision of robotics? It's actually a great example of working across disciplines. This particular grant had people from at least 6 different schools working on it all together. And I think the vision we have for moving these things towards this area we call the Northern Quarter is amazing. Having all these schools together to really interact, and I think things like this kind of centre can emerge from that kind of interaction. I want to talk a bit more about specific applications. Of course, it's a very broad area. We have loads and loads of things going on. But just a few different examples I want to mention briefly. So one thing is surgical technologies. So the idea is if you have surgery performed by robots, not by a person with a knife, it hasn't really changed for the last 100 years, it's really by robots. So you go to the doctors, you take a tablet, you go about your business, go to the gym, whatever it might be, and while you're doing this, the robot's preparing yourself and making yourself much better. It's kind of a crazy concept, you probably think I've gone mad. But in fact, we have some very good developments already in this area. It's definitely the future. We are building small robots that can go inside the body, that can actually repair things and inspect things. So for example here, we have a robot here that is designed to go inside your intestines, drive around, and inspect for cancerous tissue. So it is definitely coming, and it's going to come in the next few years, which is quite exciting. Likewise, we're doing research, what we call assistive technology. So if you have some kind of injury, if you lose a leg, for example, or some kind of brain injury, you can use robotics to actually help you to be repaired. So, for example, here on the right-hand side, we have a robot designed for robotic physiotherapy. So you have a stroke, you lose both coordination, but also muscle strength. And right now it's done by a person who guides their arm repeatedly. But we know the more therapy you have, the faster you recover. So the more you can get with people, the better it is. This device is designed, you put your arm into it, it moves you around, but very importantly, it's designed to help you relearn. So obviously it makes you stronger, but what it does, it helps you to see and perceive what you're doing to make your coordination return, and hopefully you recover full function. Likewise, at the bottom left-hand side here, we have work in lower limb prosthetics. So if you lose your leg above the knee, you need quite an advanced prosthetic device. what we're trying to do is make these devices self-learning and adaptive. So you strap it on and you start to walk and it self-learns how to make it work properly. You may think, well, that's not that interesting, you know. But in fact, if it's set up wrong, very, very quickly you have secondary problems. The other leg starts to get injured because you're not walking right. So it's absolutely critical that you make this leg walk in the right kind of way. Also, what we're trying to do is to recapture energy. So as you walk, as part of your stride, at certain points you exert energy to push you forward, but at other points you actually capture the energy back. And we want our device, our mechanical device, to do the same thing, therefore be used for longer periods of time as you walk around. We have some fantastic students in the area, and we did have a great student, a second year student, doing an internship over the summer in this area. So this student, he was working on devices for cerebral palsy, quite small devices. You take them home, and again you have therapy. He was sponsored by an alumni for a summer project, because it happened at the end of his first year. Over the summer he comes in, he does research, he's involved in all this kind of complex things going on, learns massively. But in fact he learns much more than the technological side of things. Also learned a lot of interactions with the sponsor and talking about life values. And his quote here is fantastic, thinking about, okay, well, how do I become successful? It's much more than just being technically good. I have to think about my whole ethos. How do I approach problems? How do I approach jobs in the future? And he's taken loads and loads of good things from this interaction with the mental domain. Another thing we're doing is exploration robots. It's all about robots to go into weird and wonderful places and try and measure, monitor and capture things. We've done some work in the past in historical sites, and we're still doing that. We're now looking much more towards environmental sites, nature, trying to monitor biodiversity, that kind of thing. We have an example here of one of our robots that explored the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. So I don't know if you've been to Egypt, but they're absolutely spectacular, beautiful, beautiful structures. And of course they have all these mysteries. But we know some things, we don't know other things. So what we're trying to do is build robots to go inside the Great Pyramid and to travel around quite small air shafts. They're about 200 by 200 metres square, so really quite small. They travel about 60 metres, but very importantly, they don't penetrate the casing. So the question is, what are these shafts for? And when you get to the end of the shaft, what is behind that endpoint? Is it a massive stone, or is it a hidden chamber? And that's what we're trying to explore and trying to understand with our technology. We're very proud to say that we did find some really great writing. So at the top of the shaft, we put a flexible camera through, and we discovered writing hidden for 4,000 years. It's an amazing discovery. And in fact, it's the only guaranteed writing ever found in the pyramid. There's other writing in different places, but that could be written by hand. In this place, it's totally hidden away. Nobody could possibly have put it there by hand, so therefore it's the only guaranteed writing hidden for time. It's amazing. I'm going to make a radical prediction here. I'm going crazy again. So I've got a very specific date here, so we're going to change the way that these works and functions. And the reason I can do that is because we have a very large amount of funding to make this happen. So I'm not just saying this because I've decided a whimsical thing. So at this point, you can imagine a scenario. At this date, there's a big lever, somebody famous switches the lever and all this. Not quite that way. What we're trying to do is trying to make robots that can go into cities and remove the need for big infrastructure work. So you're all seeing cones and things around and all kinds of robots being dug up. We want to do minimally invasive robotics and go to cities and can remove the need for these big type of structures. So for example, in the city, a pipe bursts underground, there's a leakage. The smart city detects this leakage either through perhaps sensor networks that measure pressure loss, or maybe by robots going through the pipes themselves, or perhaps even from an autonomous car driving around and noticing some kind of water spillage, that kind of thing. The city will then respond automatically, deploying robots inside pipes, in the air, to measure, to monitor, see what's going on. Inside the pipes, robots will arrive, they will fix this problem from the inside, and there will be no need for big trucks to go to the city and dig holes and make all this kind of mess. Of course, doing this is very difficult from ethical, regulatory and societal point of view, so we have lots of work looking at how that will affect the overall city ethos, if you like. I think very importantly, the vertical vision is much more than this. The idea is that before this pipe burst, it would be detected, it would have been fixed, there would not been a problem in the first place. It's kind of a whole kind of ethos of way of doing this kind of work. So this kind of scenario here, which is absolutely horrific, I can't imagine myself. I was looking at it, trying to work out where I'd drive, I wasn't quite sure. But anyway, this will all be gone. It'll be repaired without you sitting in, all nicely and all done properly. Okay, so anyway, how can we help? So obviously you've been quite successful in terms of large funding. I think the main things that are really, really powerful is to help people at all stages of their career, but particularly in earlier stages. So for example, we mentioned briefly about summer internships. Individuals get an enormous amount of impact from being amongst research and helping to think about the bigger picture and going forward in their lives. Likewise, many PhD students are very focused on very focused on a small technical thing. To have a bursary to go and explore broader issues to help them be a better engineer and understand their future is also very powerful. Many of our staff are quite new. I mentioned we've got quite a lot of investment on quite junior staff, but the research environment now is very difficult. It's all going towards very large grants and this kind of thing, so it's very hard for junior academics to start off. So again, small amounts of money to help these academics start their career and start a new direction is incredibly powerful for them. And last thing I mention is the idea of having these probably link between different disciplines is very hard to fund in another way. So for example, robotics working with art is very difficult to do because it's very difficult to know where to fund that. Also things like the robots, archaeology, again, very difficult to fund because funny bodies don't like this kind of strange mix of different things. So lots and lots of potential. I think small investments can make a massive difference to what we're doing right now. Okay, thank you. So I want to ask you to introduce you now to Professor Andrew Bell, who's going to talk about advanced materials. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Yes, my name's Andrew Bell, just checking. And I'm a materials engineer. Advanced materials is something that underpins all the things that you already heard about. So Rob wouldn't be able to do his work without the materials to construct the robots. And that's not just the steel and the plastic, it's the semiconductors and fibre optics and things like that. So advanced materials covers an enormous range, as I said, from concrete and steel through to optical fibres and semiconductors. And we do quite a lot of those things at Leeds. So I'm going to stick to something I know and tell you about my research rather than about everything else. My field is piezoelectric materials. And of course you all know what piezoelectric materials are, don't you? I think at least one of you does. But piezoelectric materials are materials which will turn changes in pressure into electrical voltage. So they'll turn sound waves into electrical signals. And that's exactly what they do with ultrasound imaging. So this fetal image behind you is a reconstructed image from an ultrasound scan, what we call a three-dimensional ultrasound scan. And that the system that does that uses piezoelectric materials to create the ultrasound that enters the body, is reflected off the change in density of the tissues, and then comes back to the same scanner which has piezoelectric materials on the front and turns the sound waves back into electrical signals. I'm sure many of you will have already experienced ultrasound imaging in one form or another. But that's not the only application. This is a different scale altogether. Most submarines in the world and many surface ships use piezoelectric materials in their sonar systems to identify the presence of other ships. In the case of the Astute class, there's about 10,000 sonar devices, piezoelectric devices, scattered around the hull of that ship. It's a big industry in the UK. And indeed, a significant fraction of the funding that helps my PhD students look for new piezoelectric materials comes from the defence industry. And it's a rather interesting fact that although the defence industry pays the majority of the funding for creating new piezoelectric materials, they tend to find their way into the medical imaging systems before they find their way onto the submarine. But piezoelectrics touch your lives in many other ways, not just through ultrasound scanners and submarines. Passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles all contain piezoelectric systems. They're increasing every year. Fuel injection is one of the later developments in the last 10-15 years. And of course the ubiquitous parking sensor which we all need these days to protect our vehicles. They both depend on piezoelectric. The latest consumer electronics, haptic feedback, which is when things sort of vibrate a little bit as you touch them, or autofocus cameras on your mobile phone. They depend on piezoelectric materials. Musical instruments use piezoelectric sensors to amplify during performance and recording. Stop you having to hold them up to a microphone all the time. And those world-class skiers amongst you can now take advantage of smart skis. These have piezoelectric sensors and actuators embedded in the ski that sense when you're turning and adjust the angle of the ski as you're carving through the stones. All three of these young ladies were using these smart skis when they won a Super G competition a couple of years ago. Over the last 10 years, we've developed a new class of piezoelectric materials that actually operate at much higher temperatures than the standard commercial market leader. So typically these materials work in the temperature range of 200 to 450 centigrade, which suits them to a set of applications that weren't feasible before we developed these. So they're now being used to monitor the structural health of power stations, both nuclear and conventional power stations. We're developing specific devices to go into aero engines to help monitor the fuel flow and improve fuel economy of passenger aircraft. And they're being used in chemical process plants, again to save energy by reducing the usage of steam. A couple of years ago, the university saw the opportunity and created a new company, a spin-out company called Assistive Technologies. That's benefited from nearly £3 million of venture capital investment over the last couple of years, and they're now trying to take these materials and turn them into devices and put them in the marketplace. The company now employs 4 members of my ex-research group, if you like, and it's been a great pleasure and very fulfilling to see these people move on from the research lab into industry. Particularly one of them, Tim Stevenson, started with me as an undergraduate student. He did a summer placement with us. He then went on to do a master's degree and did his master's project with us, and then decided to do a PhD. And then after a couple more years in the lab as a postdoctoral researcher, he's now actually a director of Ionics, and he's taking that company forward, hopefully to a bigger and brighter future. But what actually is materials engineering all about? What do I do every day? Well, I'm an engineer, so I make things. What's more, I design things. So my group design and build new materials basically from the crystal structure upwards. So we decide what atoms we need and where they need to be in a crystal structure to be able to produce a material that functions in the way we want it to. So this is a piezoelectric single crystal grown by my student Laura, and that will, we hope, find its way into the new energy system of the next generation. This is the smallest repeat unit in that previous crystal structure circuit, okay? And what we need to do is understand how, if we change the atoms, the elements in that crystal structure, how we can persuade the crystal structure to change its symmetry, change the position of the ions when it's subjected to a stress or a voltage, something like that. So that's what we do every day. It's not rocket science. It's actually a lot more difficult. It's quite fitting that we do a lot of crystal engineering here in Leeds, because just over 100 years ago, the father and son Nobel Prize-winning team of William Henry and William Lawrence Bragg initiated the science of crystallography by inventing the X-ray spectrometer, or we now call it the X-ray diffractometer. And this is one of their early models. My students use this technique daily, as do tens of thousands of other scientists around the world, to determine the precise position of atoms in a crystal. Fortunately, the devices we use these days are much faster, much more powerful, much more accurate, and a lot safer than the original Bragg model. And to some extent, we can also view directly where the atoms are in crystals these days. So using a rather expensive microscope known as a transmission electron microscope, we can image exactly where the atoms are, and what's more, saying what each one of those is, what the flavour of the atom is, if you like, whether it's oxygen, carbon, titanium, barium, whatever. This is a rather large beast. One of these is arriving in the university in the next few weeks. It will sit in its own room. It's long gone are the days when the microscopists would peer down the binocular eyepiece. To drive this microscope, you have to sit in a separate room so the vibrations from your body don't actually disturb the imaging. But hopefully you end up with great images like that, which help us to engineer our materials to a far higher degree. And it's just this sort of equipment, you've seen that one before, I'll come back to that. It's just this sort of equipment that used by a lot of people around the universities, or multi-user equipment used by different disciplines, that will be housed in the Bragg Centre that Peter mentioned earlier. So the X-ray diffractometers, various spectrometers, and the microscopy will all be housed there, providing a real centre of excellence for materials characterisation. There'll be scientists and students from all around the campus, from physics, chemistry, electrical engineering, chemical engineering, biological sciences maybe, that will use these facilities. And the fact that you get these people rubbing shoulders in the same facility in different disciplines, that friction is hopefully the heat that will create new ideas and new discoveries. This item, which we call various things, some people have called it the Swiss Army deposition tool because actually it's going to do a lot of different things, is more accurately called the cluster tool. It will allow us to build new materials layer by layer, as Peter already said. It will have several different deposition techniques within it, and it will be world leading. It will allow us to attract lots of great students, lots of leading scientists. And this is the sort of thing it will do. It will allow us to assemble new crystals from semiconductors, from metals, from oxides, in layer by layer to create new functions. So properties that haven't been measured before, characteristics that haven't been measured. Some of the things that we hope to be able to do with it and challenges we will address are things like what happens when we run out of speed in our current electronics, which is actually where we are now. Some of you may have heard of Moore's law, which is actually an empirical observation that the power and speed of computers doubles every 18 months. Well, actually, for the last 3 years, they haven't got anywhere. Computers are pretty much plateaued. And that's because the physics has told us we can't go any further, any smaller with the transistor devices. So we need new forms of electronics, new principles on which to build the electronic circuits of the future. And they will use materials of the type I've just described. They're composite heterostructures, as we like to call them. And we'll be looking at using the spins of electrons, not just the charges of electrons, to create these new circuits. The science known as spintrons. I'm going to try and persuade my colleagues in electrical engineering to allow me to put some of my oxide piezoelectrics on their nice clean semiconductor lasers. And therefore we can build tunable lasers that can be modulated at very, very high speeds, therefore enabling a new class of sensors that will be used in wide range of applications from industrial process control through security, through to, in this case, ground scanning sensors for mapping the currents of different resources around there. And finally, back to almost my first slide, one of the things we really want to do is produce even higher resolution medical imaging, not just the ultrasound to combine that with functional imaging that will look at different aspects of the body's performance. Okay, back to the Bragg Centre and the cluster tool. We all like nice shiny toys as scientists, but as the previous speakers have all alluded to, these pieces of equipment are no good without the great minds to drive them and to do the experiments. But of course, this is the hard sell bit now. What we really need is funds to support those great minds. You know, between the experiments, they have to eat, drink, and sleep sometimes, and that requires funding. The facilities in the Bragg Centre will be world leading. They will enable us to attract the best students, but we need to be able to support them in some ways. That's all I'm going to say, and I'll hand over to our next speaker.
Okay, so my name is Devesh Mistry. I'm a PhD student in the School of Physics and Astronomy. I'm working to develop a revolutionary new type of treatment for aging conditions of the eye. But before I talk about that, I'm going to introduce a video by Professor Helen Gleeson. She's the first woman to be appointed to the Cavendish Chair of Physics at the University, and she'll soon be the head of school here. She's going to talk to you a little bit about science at Leeds, and she's sorry she can't be here in person.
Physicists never stop asking why and how and what's going on. So for me, that's the beauty of physics. My job is to try and find out as much as I can about the world around us. Now, the actual bit of physics that I do is in an area called liquid crystals, which people have heard of in terms of liquid crystal displays. So it's actually very applied, but it's also a very beautiful area to work in. It's very visual, there's lots of optical effects, and it's something which, although I really enjoy understanding the fundamental what's going on in the system, it actually also matters in everyday life as well. For me, there were a whole range of reasons why I wanted to move to Leeds and why Leeds was the right place for me to move to. In terms of my research, I work, as I've said, in an area that investigates properties of liquid crystals, and that's a kind of soft matter, and there's a whole range of materials that fall into that category. They include polymers, colloids, they include foams and foodstuffs, and Leeds is a centre of excellence for that kind of material, for soft matter systems. And so for me, the opportunity to come and work with a very wide variety of people who have complementary expertise was really exciting. So in terms of what it means for my research and for my team's research, that was a real positive. I'm also a really committed teacher. I really like the way that Leeds Physics gets the students involved in the research labs from a very early stage. And that's just great fun, having the chance to show students from a very early stage what is at the cutting edge of research. And so that's something that's different here at Leeds as well. And I think the other thing that was very, very exciting, and I shouldn't underplay it, is the opportunity that we have to grow the school. To really do new exciting things, the opportunity that the new build offers us. And all of these things really mean that there's the chance to actually influence the school in a very positive way, moving into the rest of this century. You know, so it will be a physics department that's really doing work that's relevant to the future, as well as celebrating what's happened in the past. So one of the other things that was very attractive to me about coming to physics at Leeds is the way in which the research has actually been judged nationally to have a really significant international level impact to people's everyday lives. And that really means, in this context, how it's translated into industrial products, working with industry for new approaches for things. So spinning out companies, new methods of measurement, new polymer systems that have changed the way in which many industries actually make their products, working at the life science interface as well. So I think Leeds has got a superb reputation for that, and it's a really important part of how the physics works here at Leeds. Most of the really interesting problems that we might want to solve are not ones which sit in a single discipline. So they're not just physics problems, they're not just chemistry problems. They really are problems where a team of people can come together to work on them and understand them. And actually this interdisciplinary approach to research is something that's very close to my heart. I mean, there's some very exciting work going on in the condensed matter physics area, They've just published a paper in one of the top journals, which is all about making completely new materials, materials that just don't exist naturally. And so in particular what they did was atom by atom build up layers of material, and that means that you can begin to design whole new materials that could have implications for all sorts of new applications. So that's one area. Curiosity-driven research is incredibly important, and that's something that, yeah, in my world with my magic wand, I would make sure that sufficient of that was going on, because if we don't keep asking and answering questions, then it becomes stagnant if it's too directed into one particular area. So the curiosity-driven research is incredibly important. We have lots of good people and lots of good ideas, and the thing that limits us isn't the ideas, it's actually being able to get the resources, whether it's funding for people or equipment, or even labs, to be able to actually take these things forward. So there's a whole range of ways in which people could help and support us, all of which would be hugely valuable.
Okay, so I thought I would tell you a little bit about my own background, why I chose this particular PhD project, what I hope to get out of it and achieve after it, and about the research itself and why we believe it's so exciting. So, as we all age, we lose the ability to focus at a close distance, and that's a condition known as presbyopia. And that is caused by the lens inside your eye, which is responsible for focusing. It becomes stiffer with age, and it means it can no longer take the shape required for close focusing. Now what we're looking at is using liquid crystals to develop a completely new generation of solutions which will allow you to basically turn on a lens, and it will allow you to focus at close distance. Now how this works is it uses the fact that liquid crystals are made up of basically rod-like structures, like think of grains of rice. And when we apply an electric field to that, it causes a reorientation, which changes the properties, and it allows you to see quite dramatic changes like we have here with our contact lens, where we're switching from near to far vision between the two states here. That was some really interesting research that was being quite successful and has led to a spin-out company. But now my own research is looking to go one step completely further, and to how can we remove the need for reading glasses, remove the need for contact lenses. Can we develop a device which will be a complete rejuvenation of the eye? So I'm looking to develop a lens which will be implanted inside the eye and takes advantage of some of these properties of liquid crystals to allow you to switch focus as you were able to do when you were young, say. So this is quite... it's a challenge, don't get me wrong. But people obviously very attracted by this. People have a kind of very personal attachment to this kind of problem that people face. Because it affects all of us, and it will affect all of us by the time we reach about 45 years old. And we've had quite a bit of coverage in the media quite recently. 5 continents we've had news stories around the world interested in our work and want to know how we're doing and want updates on what's going on. So it's really nice to see the impact that this work can have. There's interest, and even though it's such an early stage of research and there's a lot of challenges, people want to know about it and want it to be a success. So I'm originally from just down the road from Beverley in East Yorkshire. I've always wanted to study physics or science at the forefront of technology, so I chose to study a physics degree, and I went to Oxford for that. I started my PhD in September last year, and following Helen's transfer to Leeds, so I'm supervised by Helen Gleeson, I transferred with her early this year to Leeds. I chose this PhD because, as I said, I want to study something where I can look at some real fundamental physics, and some of the materials which we're using have got some really interesting fundamental problems to be solved, but also I can apply this to solutions, to technologies which can impact everybody's lives really. And that was what was really exciting. And further to that, it was great to see how the research group I'm with, I can fit into that. And now we're at Leeds, we're part of an even larger group, which will really give us the resources that we need to make a success of this project, really. If you're interested in to know more about the contact lens-based solution, I've got a little demo here, so if you want to know more, I can hopefully tell you a little bit more. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much. I think we've tried to show you a flavour. If things go according to plan, then when you come back to Leeds in 10 or in Rob's case 20 years' time, we'll be in a world with robots securing the city. We'll have materials that can improve our vision and improve our way of life. We're working really hard to achieve that by seeking external funding from research councils, from European Union, from charities, from industry, and we do that very well. Last year in engineering alone we secured about £25 million of research funding. If you add to that engineering and science across the universities, about £50 million. If you add to that medicine and health, it's about £100 million. We have ambitious targets to grow that income from external sources, and we are going at it flat out. And we wish to increase our income from EU, from industry, from UK government, etc. So this is a really important part of our strategy. This will help us recover the value from the investments that we are making in these buildings. It will help us provide the facilities that go inside the buildings, and will help us provide the teams of postdoctoral researchers and PhD students to do the work. Of course, there's always the opportunity for more, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of what's been said by people about how the opportunities for getting talented students at undergraduate level and postdoc level interested, what those opportunities are. I know Claire's talked to you about opportunities for postgraduate research. I think I want to say though that for us, that as strong as that physical environment is, we are absolutely committed to developing the people. So we don't just see people as a tool for doing the research that we want to do. We see people as the people who are going to lead the research in the future. So for us, it's not just about getting people in to do research, it's about getting people in to get the ideas and to train them and develop them to be the people who are leading in society tomorrow. I think at that point I'm going to stop and just invite questions, please.
You mentioned funding from the European Union.
Yeah.
I've read recently that the universities are particularly concerned should we decide to leave the European Union. Can you confirm that?
Well, I mean, I'm reasonably apolitical about it. I think I can certainly confirm that we get a significant amount of funding from the European Union. That funding takes different sources. There's funding for blue skies research through something called the European Research Council, where really our most talented people at different stages of their career really succeed in getting funding for blue skies research. There's also quite a lot of funding for quite applied research, where we have consortia with other universities, with industry. There's also fundamental training money as well, so things called early stage training networks, etc., which allow us to train people at different levels. So I can certainly confirm that it's a major source to us in terms of supporting our science.
There are many men in the picture. How many women do you have in the engineering department?
Yeah, very fair question. That is probably a fair reflection. Okay, so in different parts of engineering it's different. In mechanical engineering and civil engineering, about 30% of our students are women. In electronic engineering, it's about 12%. Nationally, in the UK, we are ahead of the averages in all of the disciplines, apart from in chemical engineering, where we're slightly behind, and that's partly because we have a different mix of students within our chemical engineering program. But we are really actively pursuing. We want to include all people who have great minds in engineering and physical science at Leeds.
Are you doing any outreach work?
Massive amount of outreach work. And in fact, that's an opportunity if that interests you, because there's always more that we can do. But we go to schools in the region, we go to schools in our catchment areas from outside the region. We invest in facilities, so when we go there, it's hands-on things. We have female students and male students going out and doing things. It's a really big thing for us, and it's a real opportunity, actually.
Robert, I'd like to ask you a question. I found your whole lecture fascinating, particularly yours. I'm in the scrap metal business, and I was rather dismayed and perhaps thinking that now is the time for a career change when I saw that you're able to repair cast iron pipes, water pipes, with robotics. I hope you understand that I buy those broken pipes. And those are sold then to pipe manufacturers, and then they sell them back to the water industry. Are you saying by robotics that this is now an industry that will die, or eventually those pipes will require replacement?
That's a good question, yes. So we want to maintain infrastructure as far as possible. Clearly there will be advantages where we have to change things, modernise things. So we want to minimise the amount of roads we dug up, but of course at certain times there will be change. There'll also be a programme, no doubt, of actually changing infrastructure to make it accessible by robots. So in the short term, robots will be in infrastructure and repairing them. In the longer term, infrastructure will be modified so that you can do much more with robotics. So I imagine in the medium term, there'll be loads of things going on. But of course, we want to, at the end of the day, remove waste, resources, energy, materials, so therefore we're trying to reduce that kind of thing.
I think that's a polite way of saying we've got 20 years to
As a country, we are right at the top of the international league tables on the quality and the amount of research that we do in terms of patents, papers and so forth. However, we are way down the international league tables in the exploitation of that substance. Is that a problem that lies with the universities or with our industry?
I don't think it's a problem that lies with any one of us. It's a society problem. I think universities are moving much more towards understanding that we don't just produce a patent, hand it over the fence and step back and think our job is done. I think we do need as a country world to invest more of our greater proportion of our GDP in research and development as well. So, and the government has a role in that as well in terms of incentivizing it. So I think it's a societal problem. I wouldn't point the figure at any one.
To go back to an earlier question, I work for the EU, so I therefore have a rather personal interest in the outcome of the referendum. But more seriously, the point made is very genuine that the EU does supply research money for all sorts of projects, and the British public is probably not aware of that fact. Is the university doing anything to, say, influence the outcome of this referendum? And the pressure on the government?
Well, I might let you answer that one, but I think it's fair to say that we are being very clear about what the benefits are for us. But at the end of the day, I think it's important that we state things in a factual way as much as we can.
Well, the important thing, the British public needs as much information as possible about the pros and the cons of EU membership. This is a very important probe as well.
And I think it's, as a university now, and I'm stepping well outside of my engineering domain now, but you'll hear, for example, about Cultural Institute this afternoon and a wide variety of other things we do at the university. Of course, we regard it very much as our responsibility to inform society and to make sure that we help inform a strong debate about all of the issues in society.
Talking about a societal thing, I mean, Rob, you're talking about robotics, and obviously that's something that has the potential to transform society in very profound ways. How much collaboration do you do with colleagues in social sciences to sort of try and project and model what the impacts of the innovations you're coming up with might be?
So yes, we do work across boundaries, if you like. So we have a strong contingent of economics people trying to understand what this means in terms of employment, in terms of society, in terms of happiness. Of course, robots come in, particularly jobs that change in different ways. So we do have people with skills way beyond my skills to try and understand what this will mean. It's going to change things, I think, very much for the better, but we have to have new approaches to make sure that we do have that outcome.
Yeah. A quick follow-on to that. I didn't hear a lot about the research in terms of producing people that could be employed. I heard, cutting edge things and so on and so forth, and scientists get caught up in all that. But are we serving society? We're producing a lot of people that get great jobs in private industry.
Yeah, absolutely we are. I mean, and the vast majority of our of course, we're passionate about engineering and the science engineering, but the vast majority of our graduates, both, of course, undergraduates, but even our postgraduate graduates, go on and work in industry. And so that's absolutely the forefront of what we do. I talked about some of those league table data at the very beginning, and one of the big drivers of those league table data is our employability of our graduates, and that's into graduate employment. But we hold that right through at postgraduate level as well. And so yeah, it really is definitely important. Yeah.
You've heard about quite a number of very good ideas that are coming to the stage where they are commercial. What's the university's policy when they start to release it to the commercial side? And what's the university's policy on keeping a share of the companies that those that thereby generated, so that the income that they're generating comes back into research?
So we do have a professional team that deal with things like protecting intellectual property, that deal with commercialisation, deal with fundraising. I mean, maybe Andy can answer a little bit more from first-hand experience in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, typically when you create some intellectual property, there's two ways of exploiting it. You either sell it on to somebody else and license it, or you feel the opportunity to do better, you keep it and create a new company. Typically, that's the experience I've had, that the university creates a new company, it shares initially the equity, 60% from the university, 40% of the founders, so the actual workers at the chalk face, if you like, get a share of the company. But then there's also a partnership with a company called IP Group, which are venture capital providers, and they then help that company to gain the investment that's needed to grow the company, either from their own funds or by helping find other investors. They have a large portfolio. So the example I gave, which is now nearly 3 years old, obviously as new investment comes in, both the university and the founders reduce their percentage of shareholding. But in the last round, the university decided it wanted to maintain the fraction of its ownership and increase its investment in the company. So, like you were suggesting, the university is investing itself so that it will have a future dividend on that investment.
So Brian has just told me our time is up, so I'm going to declare this session closed. But we're all going to be around over lunch. Lunch is in the foyer now, and we'll be around happy to ask questions. Devesh is happy to give a demo as well.